Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for the fourth and final part of the Q&A for today. So let me get my hat on and get to the first question. My only goals are to have a massive squat and to look huge as a natty. I've run Bulgarian lite before with great success, 520 to parallel and then 495 ass to grass about a month later. I want to build up my base before running it again to peak. With these things in mind, what type of programming would you recommend? Or rather, how would you suggest going about being a squat specialist? Thanks. Now, normally I would tell people, I would actually laugh when they say, well, I want to be huge as a natty. Because the problem is that natties aren't huge because of internet standards. Now, I'm going to say, though, because you've already gotten over a 520 squat using Bulgarian training as a natty to parallel, and 5 plates ass to grass, you might have the genetic potential to be a fairly big natty. So let's just be honest there. But for the majority of people, this idea that they're going to look huge by anybody's standards as a natty, not going to happen. At least not by internet standards. By the average person standards who doesn't lift, you can get huge as a natty. But the internet standards are all based on heavy drug users who claim to be natty, so best of luck with that. But you seem to be fairly genetically gifted. So let's get on to running Bulgarian training and being a squat specialist. Now the question I would ask you is the same thing that all the coaches of Bulgarian lite would ask people like John Bros, people like Matt Perryman. If you've done that well running the Bulgarian lite type system, you've gotten to a 520 parallel squat, and like you said, 5 plates ass to grass with no drugs, why did you quit running it to begin with? Meaning you're talking about building a base further. You already have a base. You're already, for a drug-free lifter, you're already well into that advanced category. Now, you've got fantastic results off this system. Why would you quit doing it? Meaning there are coaches who coach Bulgarian lite type training who have all of their athletes do it from day one all the way until they end their competitive career. So my question is, you know it works. The problem is that it can be hard on people. It's time consuming. Not everyone can fit this sort of training into their lifestyle. You clearly could, and you clearly can again in the future because you're contemplating doing it. Why not just continue to do it? If you want to be a squat specialist, then squat every day. Do Bulgarian training indefinitely. Take your 520 squat to a 600-pound squat. Yeah, it might take you a couple years, but if you can get there as a natty to 520 running Bulgarian, why not just keep running Bulgarian and push it all the way out as far as it will go? Because you're not really going to get, in my opinion, a better system for someone who isn't going to run just tons of drugs. You're not going to improve upon this training style ever to be a squat specialist. So continue to do so. There's no reason for you to have stopped. There's no reason for you to switch to another system or run this in cycles if you don't want to. Unless you just wanted to do phases of accumulation training, which is a totally different animal, there's probably no reason to ever stop doing the Bulgarian lite if you really want to be a drug-free squat specialist. Just my opinion. All right, next question. Jason, can I do a small cut on your off-season linear periodization intermediate strength program? Maybe reduce volume or slow down the progression? And I didn't put the rest of his question because the first part really contains what we need to know. That linear system is for off-season athletes. Off-season athletes are focused on making gains. The system assumes that you are consuming enough food to make gains. You are not going to progress as an intermediate even on a small cut. So if you want to cut weight, then cut weight. Take the starting weights in the linear system from week 1 and week 2 and run those indefinitely. Don't focus on progression. If you want to do a cut, then do a cut. All right, do a cut. Come in and run week 1 of the linear program and just stay there for the duration of your cut. Lose the body fat that you want to lose. Try to maintain your strength and size the best you can. You don't need to be running a periodized system to do that. But if you're adding all these blocks and all this progression in the blocks, you're not going to do that without calories. So don't worry about progression. Don't worry about progression at all. Don't worry about any of the other training systems. The first block is generally there as a primary hypertrophy phase. So you could take week 1 and run the week 1 of that system for the duration of your cut. You're probably going to burn the most calories possible in the gym. It's not going to hammer your recovery ability too much to just sit there and run week 1 over and over and over. Just keep running it. That will keep your size on you. And you're not going to make improvements. Just focus on getting your body fat where you want it with this cut. Then when you're consuming enough food again to make progress, then you can go ahead and run the full periodization, the full 12-week program with all the blocks in it. But if you're not focused upon making progress, you're focused upon losing body fat instead of getting bigger and stronger, don't try to run a periodized program at all. There's no point. Unless you really know how to do an efficient recomp, it's going to be a waste of your resources, a waste of your recovery. Don't bother. So do it that way. All right, next question. Should you always retract your shoulder blades together on the bench press? Yes, your shoulder blades should be retracted on the bench press on every single rep. There's never any reason to spread your scapula apart. If you know how to perform the bench press correctly with the right technique, not only are your scapula retracted when you unlock it, when you bring it down, but when you bring it back up, your scapula should still be together when your elbows lock at the top. If they're coming apart, it's because your bar path isn't correct. You're not performing the exercise ideally, because again, when the scapula come apart, the chest is doing less work generally. Keeping your scapula retracted keeps the chest the most involved in the bench press. And so when you see people who say, oh, my chest can't get really big on the bench press, really most of the top experts in the world that I know of think the bench press is an amazing chest builder. It's that you're letting your scapula come apart. You're spreading your scapula at different points of the lift, maybe at the top, maybe you can't even get them there anywhere but at the bottom, maybe you're not even getting them there at the bottom. That takes tension off your chest, and it also isn't ideal for lifting the most weight because the pecs are the biggest muscle involved in the bench press, and you need them to be working all the way through it. So yes, there's no reason you should be spreading your scapula apart on the bench press ever. Learn the technique, get it down until you can do the full range of motion for your full work sets with the scapula together. And that doesn't mean partial reps like a lot of people think. You should be able to lock the bench press at the top. When you get the bar path perfect, the bench press should still have the scapula together like this when you're at full extension at the top. Shouldn't be a problem, and if you can't do it, you've got to work on the technique until you can. That's just how a proper bench press is performed. All right, next question and last question of the week. Is the Farnese Hercules physique attainable natural? Arthur Jones once wrote that someone in the ancient times must have attained it because the artist must have had a model for their statue. He reasoned that the Greeks must have used something akin to the adjustable barbell. You know, Arthur Jones is one of those interesting figures that put out some good stuff and put out a lot of bad stuff also. I mean, let's keep in mind, this is the guy who brought us machines for training. Now, that being said, I completely disagree with that. That is basically suggesting that until modern times, human beings were incapable of imagination or extrapolation. Meaning that you're basically saying that an artist couldn't look at the human body and look at musculature and imagine what the body would look like if it got thicker and fuller muscles. That they couldn't extrapolate and imagine that based upon their anatomy and looking at it. That's simply not true. That's saying human beings did not have imagination until the modern world in which we created fantasy and science fiction and art. People were able to draw things and imagine things that they hadn't actually seen. Our race has always been capable of this psychologically and cognitively. We actually have imaginations. So no, I disagree with that assertion completely, that the only way they could have made that statue is if they had a human who looked like that. Well, really? Why did they have human statues back from ancient days that have horse heads and stuff on them? Does that mean there must have been a human walking around with a horse head? Come on. Don't be absurd. Furthermore, when you look at the proportions you have there don't look like anyone who's gotten really big naturally. The waist is thicker and blockier. There's a lot of proportions on that statue that actually aren't perfect of what happens when someone does gain large amounts of muscle mass and doesn't use a drug like a lot of growth hormone or IGF-1 that causes certain proportion changes in the body. So I don't think that they got it perfect at all. I don't think they actually had a human model for the old Hercules statue. I don't think that they did at all. I think that was imagination and extrapolation of what a human would look like if they had more muscle when they looked at muscular people that they had. I think that was imagination and extrapolation. I don't think that they had a representative model at all, any more than they had a representative model for the centaur and other stuff that statues were made out of. It's called imagination, guys. Human beings have it. They're able to do it. So no, I don't think that statue existing in any way proves that humans should be able to get that size just from hard work and working out. It doesn't mean that they can't at all. That's imagination. This was an artist imagining and envisioning something beyond what he had seen, taking examples that he had and building upon those. think that's exactly what happened. And I don't think that's unreasonable. The other is unreasonable to assume that every statue that was ever made had to have, and every painting ever made had to have a real-life model to base it upon. This is acting like only people in the last couple hundred years have developed the concept of imagination. Trust me, we've had it forever. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.